Alô pessoal, aqui vai mais um vídeo muito legal. Eu quero mostrar a vocês o que está se passando na França hoje em dia, na Europa, e o que está para vir para o Brasil. E se o Trump perder nessa eleição, nós vamos entrar no período da tribulação, hein? Olha bem para isso, as coisas estão gravíssimas. Vamos prestar atenção nisso, hein?
Hello, everybody. I want to talk very briefly today about the United States and blacks, about the French police raids on multiple ministers in France that is being covered up by the U.S. media, including the sitting Minister of Health, which is unheard of. Normally, a minister is fired when it's known that there's going to be a raid, and then the raid happens after that. And last but not least, the United Kingdom, its occult practices, Prince William, and how we are completely on top of everything they're planning in the Middle East. So let's start with the United States and blacks. I'm going to do a quick screen share here. As most of you know, I have been pressing forward with black leaders. In fact, let me do this one first. And I'm the guy that's been pressing the White House with great opposition from Jared Kushner, whom I believe to be a racist. However, give the president credit. I think he knows exactly what he's dealing with. The White House is, however, in my view, making a serious mistake in not reaching out directly and overtly to authentic black leaders. And you can see them pictured here, including Bill Owens, who was invited to the White House, Reverend Bill Owens. And he left the White House after not being allowed to speak. And he has been telling every authentic black leader ever since, I was not allowed to speak. I mean, this is just crazy. They're ignoring most of the black leaders. And the ones, the two, J.R. Valerie is the other one, that are invited to the White House are not allowed to speak. They're spoken to as if they're school children in an elementary schoolhouse. This is just absolutely insane. Now, let me give you a success story that is also accompanied by a failure. I have been pumping Ice Cube, whose contract with Black America had the kind of expert input that a $100 million rapper is capable of mustering. And you can go to phi-beta-iota.net and click on Ice Cube, which is a permanent widget until at least Election Day. And you can see the contract with Black America that Ice Cube has put together, which I consider absolutely brilliant. Now, to the president's credit, they finally recognized Ice Cube. This news has come out in the last couple of days. I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but I'm certainly pleased that they did. Now, here's what you're not going to hear from the White House or from the media. They ignored the counterpart proposal to the White House that was submitted by a black leader that I may be interviewing later today. But the bottom line here is that Jared Kushner blocked the proposal from the authentic black leaders from reaching the president. And I understand Jared Kushner is blocking any public outreach to the black leaders other than the absolute bullshit that Candy S. Owens is doing with her limited number of black pals all wearing very low rent blue t-shirts over their clothing. Come on, people. This is not how you do it. Now, let's talk about France and England. France has historically been a counterpart to England at the bloodline level, at the moral level, at multiple other levels. I had a call this morning on Skype with the shadow foreign minister for France, the foreign minister of the shadow government of France. And he asked me to bring to your attention the fact that France is waking up. The yellow vests now have gone nationwide, and major white hats are starting to emerge and to oppose the president of France, whom I believe to be a Satanist and a pedophile, and under the complete control of the globalists. We are at war between the nationalists, the globalists, between the indigenous bloodlines and the Illuminati bloodlines, between good and evil. Election 2020 is not just an American election. It is an election for the future of the world. So what he told me was that at 6 o'clock in the morning, a number of retired as well as serving ministers, including notably the serving minister of health in France, Their homes were raided at 6 in the morning. The French police do not normally raid a sitting minister, and they do not normally raid ministers, retired or sitting, at 6 in the morning. That's the kind of stuff they reserve for terrorists. This is apparently a response to the president very unwisely declaring a 9 p.m. curfew in France, and then the WHO backpedaling, and now some very respected families in France are bringing legal lawsuits. They're bringing lawsuits against French ministers who are not protected by French law with impunity that is reserved in the United States for Monsanto and vaccine manufacturers. These families are basically saying that hundreds of thousands have been murdered across France because of the illegal lockdowns, the masks, the withdrawal from the public from HCQ, and so forth. Now, it's very...
Viu, gente? Isso aí eu falei antes. Antes de começar os meus vídeos, você pode ver, aos 3, 4 meses eu falei isso. Esse lockdown não é consequência da doença. Esse segundo também. Ele é consequência que eles não têm dinheiro. E outra coisa, nesse inteirinho está havendo muita prisão, muita morte de inimigos do governo. Entendeu? Matando aqueles que têm segredo e podiam revelar. Está havendo muita matança, Na Itália também aconteceu isso, ainda está acontecendo. Eles estão falando, eles estão correndo atrás de fechar a boca de quem estão contra eles. Entendeu? Quem até serviu no governo no passado, eles estão indo atrás e estão eliminando. Estamos num período muito difícil, gente.
Very interesting that in California and several other states, lawyers, doctors, and pastors are all rising up. And in fact, in various states, you can go to prison for 30 years for spreading false information during a public health emergency, or if you are an official of the state government or the federal government or the local government, you can go to prison for 30 years for prolonging a public health emergency based on lies and beyond reasonable.
Viu, gente? Essa é a nova lei que estão querendo implantar para calar a boca do mundo. Lei que eles dizem e é irrefutável. A verdade é deles e do governo, e quem for contra o governo vai ser preso, aprisionado, vai ser tratado como terrorista. Tu pode ter até médico de você contrariar o governo, falar que essa doença não é assim, assado, dizer que não precisa disso. Você vai estar encarando uma prisão e até desaparecimento. Isso é o começo das turbulências que estão para vir. Os governos estão querendo ficar comunistas. É a globalização, gente.
Lane. So France is rising up. And I also learned in passing that there are two things happening in France. One is that the French government has been illegitimate since the 4th of February 2008, after signing the Lisbon Treaty and then some other things. It turns out the French people voted against this. The parliament modified the constitution in order to agree to it. And so France is now in the middle of its own kind of Brexit, where there are rising forces that are going to say, basically, screw the European Union, screw the unelected commission, we're out of here, and oh, by the way, screw the British as well. In passing, he told me that Notre Dame was burned down. It was definitely a false flag. It was definitely an act of man. But I did not know this.
A false flag que ele diz é o seguinte: essas duas igrejas que pegaram fogo na França, foi o próprio governo que colocou fogo. Foi o próprio governo para tirar a atenção quando o Macron estava sendo investigado e o povo contra eles, o Yellow Jack, eles, para desviar a atenção dele, do Macron, colocaram fogo na igreja. Eles fazem isso, gente. Esses caras são assim mesmo. Eles desviam a atenção atacando, botando fogo, fazendo queimada no mato, que nem nos Estados Unidos. Eles tentam desviar o foco que está contra eles para outra coisa, e a mídia ajuda com as notícias, aumentando aquela besteira, fazer aquela coisa ser importante quando não é. Entendeu? Informação falsa. É desinformação o nome disso, desinformação. O pessoas pensam que aquilo é importante, não é. São os políticos que são importantes. Olha, se você vai fazer uma passeata que nem o sistema passado do bombeiro que teve no Brasil, que eles foram fazer por aumento, o governo, que era da Dilma, imprisionou, botou. Ninguém, a mídia não falou nada. Bateram, tinham criança lá, fizeram uma atrocidade. E o que aconteceu? Destruíram aquela organização que era de bombeiro. Chamaram de criminoso, queriam botar até na prisão. Por isso que eu digo, gente, você só é bom até você ir de contra o governo. Você foi das coisas que o governo está fazendo, mas vocês jogam contra o outro, contra o racismo, eles estão financiando isso. Eles que pagam as passeadas do racismo e tudo mais para um julgar a gente um contra o outro. Porque quando tu está discutindo sobre racismo, tu não está com raiva do governo, tu está com raiva do teu cara que está passando na rua que não tem nada a ver, que tu nem conhece. Esse é o sistema, gente. Nós temos que olhar isso com muito cuidado.
And I believe this man absolutely. The burning of Notre Dame was also partly an exorcist event in which a number of evil entities were burned out of Notre Dame, which is a form of portal, not just a cathedral. And it's also, by the way, not controlled by the church. It's controlled and funded by the French government. So that was interesting. Now, on England. We now know that the Queen of England is a complete subordinate to the Rothschild family in the city of London. And once a year she goes to the...
Viu? Agora vai falar da Inglaterra. A Rainha Elizabeth, todo o reinado da Inglaterra é subalterno do Rothschild, que tem o maior banco, já falei isso nos meus outros vídeos. O Banco Central do Brasil pertence a ele, o Banco da Argentina, e tem 95% dos bancos do mundo. Só não tem dos Estados Unidos, que é por outros acionistas. Ele tem um poder incrível. E ele tem uma cidade de Londres, onde está o banco dele, que é só dele, ele não paga nem imposto, é que nem o Vaticano. E a Rainha Elizabeth obedece a ordem dele. Ele é sionista, judeu sionista, que não é judeu por sangue. Ele veio é casar, um governo casar, são casarias que vieram da parte da Turquia, aquele lugar ali, da Geórgia, e eles são judeus por religião. Eles lêem o Talmud, ele não tem nada a ver com os judeus ortodoxos.
The city of London, she takes off her shoes and she bows low to the Lord Mayor of the city of London. I believe that when Donald Trump is reelected, one of his priorities is going to be the eradication of the city of London and the Rothschild fortune. And I stand corrected. I thought the Rothschilds had made a deal with President Trump. I have learned that they have not made a deal, and therefore they are going to feel the full force of the American empire when the president is reelected. Now, what I had not really understood was that all of the talk about reptilians in the United Kingdom royal bloodline was not about alien reptilians. It was actually about the satanic snake, which is a reptile. And I've had some very interesting conversations about the occult in England. I learned that Camilla is one of the high witches in the United Kingdom. And she, in fact, was the one who chose Diana, who was representative of all of the bloodlines that were left out. Prince Charles literally had to plan sex with Diana so that Prince Williams was birthed at exactly the right time under an eclipse. And I'm going to show you a website that I think is absolutely astonishing. And it comes with the very highest recommendations. Carl Donnie's Oracle. This is CarlDonnie'sBlogspot.com. If you want to get at it the lazy way, search for Cal, K-A-L, Donnie, D-A-N-I, and then Prince William occult numbers. One of the things that I'm really starting to realize is that the enemy, if you will, the globalists, the Satanists, the elite pedophiles that torture and murder children and drink adrenochrome as part of their control of the world, they live by numerology and symbology and astrology. And what's really cool is that I'm starting to realize that we're doing this massive information operation that is not only aimed at the American public and the global public, but we're also messing with their numbers. And it turns out that there are counterattacks that can be mounted that screw up the occult reliance on numerology, symbology, and astrology. And I won't go into this any further. This is not something that I spend a lot of time on, but I think it's worth your while to read some of the stuff about the occult and numbers and so forth. And then as you look at things like numbers, let's take Prince Williams and his squadron. It's the 117 squadron, and the goat's head of Satan is its symbol. I'll stop there. What I'm learning is that for all that I know, I'm literally in elementary school. And those of you that rely on me for some kind of sense of the thing, I'm proud to serve you. But again, we're at the very beginning of a long fight, not at the very end. And what I've learned is that we are going to not only have an important election in 2020, but that most of Congress is going to be flushed out, and we will have a massive number of special elections as well as a whole new #Unrig Election Reform Act for 2022. I'm upset with the White House for not reaching out to independents, libertarians, Greens, and the Sandinistas, who are populists, not communists, but I have been assured that in 2022, we will have a proportional Congress in which no one party can control either chamber, and the independents, libertarians, and the Sandinistas will have their share, and we will never again be dominated by the deep state and its shadow government two-party tyranny. That's it, folks. I don't know what to believe, but I do know what I believe. And I believe that President Trump, the Orange Man, is the chosen one to fight against the satanic Illuminati bloodline, King of Kings, Third Temple, Solomon, Jerusalem Prince, all that crap. That's evil crap. And the evil only wins if you let it win. You have to allow it to win. So we are fighting back. And I'm posting an interview later today with Carrie Cohen, and she has some very interesting things to say. And I certainly recommend her book. I'll stop there. I think we are waking up, even with all of the censorship, even with all of the strikes and so forth. I think we are waking up. Alternatives are emerging. This is perhaps the most interesting horse race in history. And I have my money on Donald Trump, the White Hats, and the average great American, who is in fact the Bunker Hill for Australia, for Canada, and for the rest of the world. How goes America into the light is how goes the world into the light. God bless all of you, God bless America, and God bless President Donald Trump.
Viu, gente? É isso que eu quero te dizer. Nós temos o Donald Trump perto. Não quer dizer que o Donald Trump seja um cara assim, tipo exemplo, né, cristão e tudo mais. Ele não é exemplo de nada, mas ele é o único que está dando apoio ao aborto, contra o aborto, né? Que a gente não quer aborto. Um cristão conservativo não vai querer aborto, vai querer cuidar esse negócio da pedofilia, tráfigo humano, né? Que nenhum conservativo, nenhuma pessoa que não quer isso, né? Que é pena de justiça pesada em quem é criminoso, botar na cadeia mesmo, entendeu? Quem faz crime contra os outros, de matar, roubar, ataque, isso é outra coisa que o Trump faz. Ele não fez nenhuma guerra, foi o único presidente que em 4 anos não se meteu em nenhuma guerra. O Trump não criou nenhuma guerra, e isso é bom, porque todos os outros presidentes entraram em guerra, que os Estados Unidos só bota o presidente cada 4 anos, eles entram numa guerra, seja ela qual for. O Trump não entrou. Então, tem muitos pontos que o Trump está... Emprego, ele quer ver todo mundo trabalhando, e o mundo todo tem um novo negócio e quer se distanciar da China. Então, gente, ele tem um bom plano como político. Eu não quero saber da vida dele, que ele teve muita mulher, casou 3 vezes. Isso não é problema da gente. Contanto que ele faça o serviço dele e que proteja os abortos, que é uma causa que eu eu não me importo com o negócio de homossexual. Para mim, você pode ser, entendeu? Homossexual, eu não me importo. Eu sou cristão, mas eu não me importo. Eu só digo que a Bíblia condena, só isso. Mas eu não estou querendo que todo mundo seja forçado a acreditar na Bíblia. Acredita quem quisesse. A Bíblia só acreditada aqueles que Jesus toca do coração. Não tem nada a ver com política. Então fica assim, gente. Eu espero que vocês gostem desse vídeo. E dê um clique aí no sininho, tá? Clica no sininho e vamos compartilhar o vídeo, se vocês puderem, tá? Um abraço, fica com Deus aí.